In the last episode, I went through all of Dad's old files and papers to look for clues that might help me find out why he was hiding so much. This time I'm getting in contact with some of Dad's old work colleagues to find out what they knew about him, but some of the chats leave me with more questions than answers. One of the first places that I looked when I started looking into Dad's life was his time at the Commission for Racial Equality. He worked there for over 20 years and it was a huge part of his life. So I knew that if I wanted to get in touch with old work colleagues and potentially friends and find out what the last 20 years of his life were like, that was the place to go. I emailed the CRE to find out if they had any of his old information on his personal file or if they could put me in touch with anyone. Unfortunately, they only keep personal files for 8 or 9 years, I think, and by the time I got in contact with them, it had been 10 years and they just deleted his personal file. So a lot of information that could have been really useful, like where he'd been before he worked at the CRE, university, date of birth and all that kind of stuff had all been deleted, but they were able to put me in touch with a bunch of people who'd worked with Dad, and I've been able to get in contact with those guys and set up some Zoom chats and find out a bunch of stuff about what Dad's time was like when he was working there. Did Dad ever get to a point where he would talk about other friends or family? Was that ever something that came up at all?
No, he was very private. He didn't talk, not to me, about his family life at all.
Yeah.
He may have mentioned you, but you know, that was passing my son, this, that, and the other. But no, I'm trying to think. I never went home with him. I don't think he came to our house. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Anyway,
probably a long time ago. Yeah, I'm asking you to stretch the memory back quite a long way, anyway. So
yes, yeah. What, if I may say, he was what I'd say was a man without ego.
Yeah.
He was a modest guy who was very conscientious. You know, there were people who had all sorts of agendas and also personalities. And he was always open and friendly. He would never, you know, push his own opinion. There are people who want you to listen to them and take on board their views. He was not like that. He would listen and he would offer a reasoned sort of proposal.
Yeah.
So he was a sort of a solid member of the team, I'd say, who contributed a great deal in his time there.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, he was a schoolmaster as well, wasn't he, or a head teacher back in Ghana?
Really, in Ghana, yeah.
In Ghana. And I think everybody I spoke to immediately said he still has that style of a teacher. So when he was talking, he would switch to that mode as though he was giving a classroom lecture.
Right. Was that good or was that bad?
Some people took that really well, and some people really, really got offended, I must say. In fact, 1 or 2 people said, "We are not kids." But when you looked at their performance, we said, well, hey-ho, I think you could do with the dosage of Peter O'Fallon. Yeah, absolutely. And they knew that Peter would say it as it was. Let's put it this way. I mean, he was... what's the word I'm looking for? He was blunt to the point. If something was bad, he would say it's bad. He wouldn't beat around the bush. Yeah.
I like that, though. I think that's a good way to be. Like, who's got the time to be dancing around the subject for...
No. He wouldn't. He would just sit there in a meeting with the directors and chief executives, and he would actually tell them that, look, this is not good.
Right. If you didn't know they were both talking about my dad, you would think that Zahid and Andrew were talking about 2 completely different people. Was he the pushy school teacher calling people out for their failures, or a valued member of the team who didn't push his views on others? When I think about my dad, I can see both sides. But he must have so consistently played these separate roles that 2 people he worked with had completely different ideas about who he was. That takes work. If you're enjoying the videos, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me get the story out to more people. I think the thing that's really most apparent, having spoken to all these people, is that Dad didn't really have that many close relationships with anyone at work, and that kind of rings true to what I thought about Dad at the time. Like, he didn't have a lot of friends, and although he was really passionate about the work, he wasn't that bothered about, he wasn't the kind of guy that was going to go down the pub with people after work. So the people that I spoke to had fond memories and a lot to say about the work that he did, but probably didn't know him all that well, and no one was really able to tell me more about any other family members or what Dad's feelings were like about going back to Ghana or anything like that.
Because there's a rule that says that once you get to 60,
Yeah.
because it was a civil service post, you had to leave.
Aha.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So even if you wanted to work until the retirement age of 65,
You had to leave at 60.
or if you want to stay on, you had to take a drop in grade.
Ah, right.
Yeah?
That's really
So
interesting.
if you were a senior,
Yeah.
you got to go down to the next level down. In some cases,
It's a strange rule.
well, it's a civil service route. So after a while, you don't worry, you know.
Yeah. It's just how it goes.
But I mean, I came here when I was 21,
Mhm.
right? And I went through college. I did a degree in biochemistry and microbiology, and worked in the university for 5 years, in London University. And then after that, there was no way up for me. It was always out, because I got my degree by the time I was about 28, 29.
Yeah.
And in the English society at that time, if you didn't have your degree by 25, they regarded you as a failure.
Right.
Nobody took into consideration that I had done 5 years teaching in Guyana,
Yeah.
right? So so when the job came up in the commission, I jumped at the chance and I moved out of London. And as I say, I never looked back.
Speaking to Maurice also got me thinking back to the letter Dad wrote to his old employers admitting to lying about his age. The fact it was so difficult to continue working at the CRE once you were over 60 means I'm pretty sure that Dad was forced out once they realised he was of retirement age. It's such a shame that the CRE deleted all of Dad's old personal files, because all the records about what went down back then were now gone, and all the people involved in Dad's case at the time had either now retired themselves or didn't get back to my emails.
It was really interesting talking to Maurice. Him and my dad didn't know each other very well, but just hearing about his story, it was really similar to my dad's. Like, he came over from Guyana when he was in his 20s, and the thing that he was saying was that if you didn't have your degree by the time you were 25, you were considered a failure. And that would have been the situation that my dad was in. He wouldn't have got his degree until he was in his 30s. So that, and the fact that he said that at the CRE where he and my dad both worked, by the time you got to 60, you had to retire, basically, or take a big drop in pay. Those are two reasons, potentially, why Dad might have decided to lie about his age and make himself younger, so that he was more employable and so that he had longer to work. Doesn't explain why he lied to his family about his age and also his birthday. That's weird still, but it does maybe explain a reason why he was doing what he was doing.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, then drop a comment, like the video and subscribe so you don't miss new episodes coming soon.